Okay, well, let's go ahead. We've broken down the game. Let's go ahead and make our predictions. So I want score. Team you think that's going to win. Of course, the spread is 4.5 in favor of the Rams. So the team, your pick and your score will tell us whether or not you think they're going to cover the spread. And then your pick for Super Bowl MVP as well. Thompson, we'll start with you.
Okay, so pretty sure based on my analysis, you guys can kind of tell where I'm going with this Super Bowl. I definitely think that Burrow's going to outplay Stafford. He's been in this situation before. We've seen Burrow come up clutch this entire playoffs. He was down 18 to the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league, almost outplayed him in my opinion. Joe Burrow having experience in national championship games that he played in a couple of years back. So I say that I think the quarterback matchup goes to the Bengals, and honestly in the Super Bowl, I'd say that's the most important matchup. So I'm going to take the Bengals, regardless of all of this talk that their offensive line can't handle this Rams defensive line. So I think that the score I say this is going to be not a high scoring game, but not a low scoring game. I think it's going to end up being pretty close. I know one thing that we haven't really touched on so far is the special teams. Both of these special teams groups are special. Obviously, we've seen Eddie McPherson close out the past 2 games. We've seen Matt Gay of Los Angeles Rams. He's made his first Pro Bowl this year. So I don't think special teams is going to be an issue at all. I think it's just going to come down to Burrow outplaying Stafford. So I think that the final score will be 31-28 Cincinnati. I think our Super Bowl MVP has to go to Joe Burrow. I think he's the future of this league. So,
well, as Emmy and I like to say on a lot of our podcasts, I mean, we've been doing this for, 94 episodes now. Great minds think alike in most cases. And I have a very similar score prediction and Super Bowl MVP prediction as you do, Thompson. Look, I said before the playoffs, and Emmy knows this, that I thought the San Francisco 49ers were going to get in and they were going to win 1 or 2 games. That happened. However, I still went on to pick against the 49ers in both games that they won. In all 3 of the Bengals games this postseason, I have picked against them, and it's bitten me in the ass over and over and over. Joe Burrow. And to add on to that, the Bengals, as we see, 4.5-point underdogs. Since 2010, underdogs of 3 or more points in the Super Bowl, 5-1 straight up. The only underdog to lose, okay, in that group had a 28-3 lead on Tom Brady with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter. That was the Falcons back in 2016. I'm going to take, and I never thought I would say this ever, just 2 years ago or a little less than that. But I'm going to take the Bengals to win by 3 points. Evan McPherson, whatever they're calling him now. I think there's a couple nicknames out there, to make the game-winning field goal. I'm going to take the Bengals to win 30-27, cover the 4.5-point spread. And I agree with Thompson. If they do that, I think it'll go to Joe Burrow, the Super Bowl MVP.
Wow. That's interesting. I didn't think we would have a Bengals sweep here. But all week I had been telling myself, I might pick against the Bengals. I mean, this defensive line, they're unbelievable, but I don't know if I can pick against Joe Burrow right now. That's the thing. here's how I think it's going to go. I think in the Super Bowl, with it being a game where it's like a 30-minute halftime, because of the halftime show, there's not going to be a lot of momentum carried over from the first half to the second half. So I think even if the Bengals go down at halftime, I think they're still going to be able to get this game to the fourth quarter. And then from there, it's just all about Joe Burrow making plays, you know? And, you know, part of me is like, I'm going to pick the Rams, this defense to dominate, and maybe pick like a Odell Beckham Jr. to win the MVP or something like that. But I just can't do it. I've said on this podcast, I was probably a little early, but I was also a little hesitant as well to be like on the Joe Burrow bandwagon. I said, I think right before the playoffs that I think he's like a top 7, top 8 quarterback. And if we're talking just who do you want to win one game, if you're going to choose any quarterback in the NFL, I mean, it's tough, but there really isn't a lot of guys that I would put ahead of Joe Burrow. So I think maybe look for Jesse Bates to get a big interception, or maybe a fumble from Cam Akers or something of that nature. Because I think the Bengals are going to get it done, and I think it's going to be 35-28.
Wow. We all picked the Bengals. We all have a similar score. Oh my gosh. Wow. I did not expect this. But hey, they definitely would be. I mean, we've seen great stories the past couple months, half year in sports. I mean, there are plenty of examples, but the most recent one I can think of is the Braves winning the World Series after only winning 88 games in the regular season, going on that run. We've seen plenty of stories like this, but I think this would be, I mean, there were still experts, including myself. I'm not an expert, but that thought the Bengals were still rebuilding, and they were still they'd be improved, but they were still probably the worst team in the AFC North. But we certainly didn't foresee this receiving core turning into a top 5 receiving core in the league. I didn't foresee Joe Burrow being this good this soon. And this defense, it got a lot better very fast. And as I talked about, the adjustments, whoever the defensive coordinator is, I don't know his name, this coaching staff has done a great job. I had my fair share of questions about Zach Taylor coming into the season, but you got to give him a lot of credit. And as Emmy said, I do think if they win this game, even if they don't win this game, I think there's an argument. But if they win this game and Burrow plays a big part of it and he wins the MVP, I mean, we're talking about national championship, Heisman, Super Bowl MVP. I mean, that's like, I don't think anyone's ever done that. So I don't know, man. I think you have to put him top 10 at least. And I think there's an argument to be made he could be higher than that. I think he led the league in completion percentage. He leads the league in passer rating under pressure. He leads the league in a lot of these categories that matter. And in the biggest moments, he's the coolest. So I never thought I would see it. I never thought I would say it, but I'm picking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. It's insane.
Burrow's just got some type of swag to him. No one can explain it. It's just the way he presents himself on and off the field. It's just something that we haven't seen in the league in recent years. It's crazy. Just before this year, when I was making my annual playoff predictions, I didn't have the Bengals. I had the Bengals going 6-11. I thought there would be there'll be some improvement, but this exponential improvement is unheard of in the National Football League. But we're here now. So
We are.
what can't Joe Burrow do?
Before we wrap this podcast up, I do want to talk about or just point out a couple things because I do think the Super Bowl, I mean, it's the biggest sporting event of the year. It gets the most views, right, by far. And it's the biggest event of the year, biggest television event of the year. But there's more to the Super Bowl than just the actual football game. I mean, there's watching with your friends, watching with your family, whoever you watch it with, eating a bunch of food that makes you feel sick the next day, drinking a bunch of beer. But there's also, as we said, the Super Bowl halftime show and the advertising that goes into the Super Bowl. So I'm just going to point out a couple things here before we wrap this up that I thought was interesting when I was doing my research. In terms of viewership, because I know these playoffs have been insane and they've gotten a ton of views and the ratings have been off the charts. NFL postseason games averaged 36.3 million viewers per game. That's a lot. The most watched NFL postseason since 2015, 2016. There were a total of 184 million unique viewers across the US to tune in to NFL postseason games this postseason. And there were a total of 82 billion minutes of NFL postseason coverage consumed across television and digital streaming this postseason, which is just absolutely mind-boggling when you think about it. And this Super Bowl will probably set another record for most views, most watched Super Bowl, because it's two new teams, two new storylines, and I think there's a lot of entertaining parts to this game. And then the advertising part of it. I just thought this was interesting. The average price for 30 seconds of ad time for this Super Bowl, which will be aired on NBC, $6.5 million. Some ads being purchased for north of $7 million. That is up from $5.5 million last year in Super Bowl 55 when CBS had the game. In terms of brands you're going to see advertising, it's your usual brands. Pepsi, who does the Super Bowl pretty much every year. Anheuser-Busch. I just saw a Budweiser ad today in one of my advertising classes that's going to be aired. Kia, avocados from Mexico, Intuit TurboTax. All these brands that you typically see will be advertising at the Super Bowl. But this Super Bowl is special in particular because it's being deemed the Crypto Bowl. Because all these cryptocurrency exchanges, and I'm sure Thompson, you could better explain this than me, but they're going to be doing ads during the Super Bowl. So be on the lookout for that as well. Just a couple interesting notes because there's a lot more to the Super Bowl than just the game, and that's why it's the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's really become a worldwide thing. My buddy, he's on the golf team here with me. He's from the Netherlands, and he said him and his dad used to stay up and watch the Super Bowl all throughout his childhood, which is crazy to think about. And even his mom would come in during the halftime show and watch that. So the sport is growing a lot. It's definitely not a worldwide sport by any means, but the Super Bowl is the showcase of the sport for the world to see. So hopefully we get a great game. I think it will be a great game. But no matter what happens, I just think it's just going to be so fun to see so many storylines and questions get answered. Like, can Matthew Stafford win the big one? Can Odell Beckham Jr. come up clutch, which obviously he has this playoff run, but in the past he wasn't. But other questions like that, there's so much stuff up in the air.
It's more than just a game. It's more than just a game, this Super Bowl and all Super Bowls. Just seeing these two new teams, especially the Bengals, it's going to be a great watch, regardless of if you're a diehard NFL fan or just a average Joe from the street. It's going to be a great game. So I'm really looking forward to it this weekend.
Absolutely, I am as well. So with that, I think that's going to wrap it up in good time for our Super Bowl preview podcast. As we always say when we have a guest on, Thompson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll certainly want to have you back at some point. There are many sporting events coming up. I mean, March Madness, the World Cup is this year, right? You're a big soccer guy.
Big World Cup guy.
So we'll certainly have you back on at some point, but thanks for coming on. Enjoyed a lot of viewpoints and your takes. And then, of course, to our fans out there, enjoy the game. Make sure to share the content, like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating and review if you want to. If you hate us, then don't. And yeah, if you don't have anything else to say, I'll just go ahead and sign us off.